Hold up, I ain't trying to stump, man, but the Yeezys jumped over the jump, man. I be in and out of arenas like I'm Scottie Pippen.
Left my elbow in the pot, a la Vince Carter.
Bitch, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym?
James Harden with the range on me, nigga, way back. Coach, they won't knock me off my pivot, get it.
Been flowing stupid since Vince Carter was on some through the legs arm and a hoop shit.
And you can live through anything if magic made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, now you do.
Yes, sir. We are back. Round of applause for yourselves. This is your guy, Marcellus Ease, and we got a few things on the docket for today. Even though LeBron James' son have fell down ESPN's rankings and is perceived to be in next year's draft, there are still executives coming out saying teams are willing to take the risk and draft him anyway, because just having a 1% chance of getting LeBron equates to a large monetary benefits for a lot of these franchises. So we'll touch base on some of the inner nuances that will have these franchises taking a risk on a player that actually might not even be NBA ready. And is Luka scoring too much? Charles Barkley and former two-time NBA champion Kenny Smith spoke about this. We'll take a look at some historical nuances involving players such as Michael Jordan and Kobe when they had to change their game around in order not only to elevate teammates, but to put them in a situation where they're competing for championships year in, year out. Also, I have a continuation into my series, Rivals Never Die, and this will be Volume 2 starring Paul Pierce and Udonis Haslem. With the current media landscape being the way it is, and players having the ability to get their stories out, certain sentiments really never die. And finally, I'll touch base on the multi-layered conundrums of the NBA and numerous sports leagues accepting the influx of cash coming in from the sports books, as yet another incident comes into light, but this time involving a current active player. So the league is in a very interesting place with this whole Bronny James situation, because executives are coming out and saying regardless of him having cardiac issues, regardless of him averaging 4 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, they're willing to draft him. And there's a few multi-layered things happening here at the same time, with some of the owners actually trying to cash out and increase the evaluations of some of the NBA franchises. Keep in mind, when LeBron James rejoined the Cavaliers, they were the 19th team with the highest net worth. And by the time he joined them, he bumped up their net worth by over $500 million. And only the Lakers, Bulls, and the Knicks were worth more than the Cavs at the time. But let's check out what one of the executives has stated about Bronny James being drafted regardless.
I think everyone is preparing for him to go in the draft, and I'm dead serious. I think a lot of teams will take the stance that they'll draft him if there's a 1% chance LeBron will join them. So I'll be surprised if he doesn't enter.
Teams will definitely have a higher chance than 1% of getting LeBron James if they go ahead and draft Bronny. But make no mistake, this is all about boosting the net worth of some of these NBA teams. So stars being attached to these franchises have a huge impact on their net worth, as we can also see it play out in Phoenix, in which the owner purchased the team for an inflated price of $4 billion, and to somewhat maintain that evaluation, even though it dipped, he proceeded to go all in and acquire the services of Bradley Beal. Now, for most of us spectators on the outside looking in, it almost seems like they're attempting to win an NBA championship. But for quite a few of these owners, they're trying to maintain evaluations. The NBA, for the most part, is 60% marketing, 30% business, and 10% basketball. And make no mistake about it, it's definitely profit driven. And we've seen other large entities like Adidas be so profit driven that they even went back to work with Kanye West after he made certain remarks that made their brand look bad. And another layer to this situation that's kind of gets tricky, because unlike Adidas, the NBA is talent based as far as getting in. So when a player like Bronny gets drafted in, averaging 4 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists per game, along with cardiac issues, it puts the league kind of in a compromising position, because now you're drafting players by merit, not by skill. So drafting a player like Bronny in is going to show a lot of nepotism, but at the same time, the league is so profit driven. Can one of the franchises really say no of at least having a 1% chance of increasing the franchise's net worth by $400 to $500 million? We already seen the league take a boatload of cash from the gambling companies. And so far, they're willing to overlook a lot of the negatives that come with it. The scrutiny of being a fixed league, and also coaches and players being threatened over fans and spectators losing their parlays, as we've seen it play out with JB Bickerstaff in Cleveland, and also Bradley Beal last season having a run-in with a fan that cursed him out on his walk out from the tunnel. But again, there's a lot of money at stake here, and LeBron returning to Cleveland back in 2014 really serves as a proof of concept, as the Cavs were worth $515 million. And then once he made his return, this team climbed up all the way to $1 billion, going from the 19th highest net worth all the way to number 4. And this is all in one offseason. So we can only imagine how much the bump could possibly be at a time where franchises across all sports, and also the inflationary period that we exist in right now, where all assets across the board, whether housing, commercial real estate, are up at inflated prices. So Luka Doncic this season is averaging the most points of his career thus far. And even though the Dallas Mavericks at the trade deadline has somewhat revamped the roster, the results have been pretty much the same. But Hall of Famer / shit talker Charles Barkley have brought a good point of emphasis on Luka's game, as players like him through the annals of NBA time have somewhat brought down their production. But we'll properly link this into historical context. You guys check it out, and every once in a while I'll check in.
Ernie, and Ken and Shaq can agree or disagree, the Mavericks frustrate me so much because they should be so much better. You know, we make a big deal out of Luka's numbers. His numbers should be going down. When you play with better players, when you're a great player, the better players you play with, your numbers should go down. He's got to do a much better job of getting rid of the ball, using those other guys. And they're playing the same way they played when they didn't have any talent. They got P.J. Washington and
Daniel Gafford.
And Gafford. But Luka, as great as he is, he's got to learn to play without the basketball. Ernie, when you play, and Shaq would know this better, and Kenan knows this also. When you play with better players as a great player, the game should be easier, not harder. Your numbers should go down, not up. And his numbers are going up. That's why they're not winning.
And Charles right here is exactly on point. And bringing this back to historical context, before Phil Jackson took over for the Chicago Bulls in 1989, Michael Jordan was averaging 35 points, 37 points per game. He was going off and doing his thing. It was not until Phil Jackson got there and had him trust his teammates more and implemented that triangle system. And then we started to see Jordan averages somewhat come down. He never ever went back to being that 35 points per game guy. He always hovered around 30, but he was winning. That was a key difference. And the same thing could be said about Kobe Bryant. As soon as Shaq left, he went on his little scoring stretch where he was doing him, especially in that 2005-2006 season where he dropped 81 points in that game. For that year, he averaged 35 points a game. Then he averaged 31. But of course, when the Grand Zen Master came through, his averages started going down, about 5 points less per game. He went all the way back down to averaging 28 to 26 points per game when they end up making their final runs from 2008 all the way to 2010. And Luka right now is playing the James Harden style of basketball that we've seen from the mid-2010s. But similar to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, when Harden was hovering around 27 to 30 points per game, that's when the Houston Rockets seen their most success. During the 2016-17 season, when they finished third in their conference, and he averaged about 30 a game. And in the following season, in 2017-2018, he averaged about the same, and they finished first place in their conference. But between that 2017 and 18 season, from the following season in 2018-2019, he went from 30 points per game to 36 points per game. And that's where you begin to see the Rockets falling outside of the top 3 in the division from year in, year out. As in that 2018-2019 season, the Rockets finished as a 4th seed in their division, while James Harden averaged 36 points per game. And in the next season, he averaged 34 points per game, while the team once again finished as the 4th seed in their conference. So that Luka Doncic / James Harden heavy usage style of play does not really work, especially when you start to pass 30 points per game. And that's historical across the board, going from Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan. And speaking of Kobe Bryant, he touched base on this type of scenario, explaining that that style of play is not conducive to winning a championship. You guys check it out as he explains the 2018-2019 season in which everyone saw James Harden have a bump from averaging 30 points per game to averaging 36. And Kobe explains what he already understood, judging the scenario from a champion's perspective and also from a historical perspective as he comes from the tutelage of guys like Michael Jordan.
James Harden, of course, crazy streak this season. What do you think of what he's doing right now?
I think I'm not a fan of in terms of winning championships. I don't think that style is ever going to win championships. But at the same time, you have to keep your team's head above water to win games. So you have to do what you have to do to win games, and he's doing that, right? Now, I think...
So are you saying you don't think James Harden and the Rockets, as constructed, can win a title?
Not with this style of play, it won't win, right? With one player dominating the ball. Now when you have Chris Paul come back and you have more movement to the offense, where you move guys around, where you're harder to find.
And Chris Paul's back, but you mean more in the...
Yeah, because listen, if you take one player, you put him at the top of the key, or you put him on the wing, and you're running screen rolls, you're always in front of the defense. The defense can key on that, particularly in the playoffs. And that's easy to defend.
Now right there, even though CP3 was out, Kobe emphasized that type of style of play will not work in the playoffs the higher up you go. Now, two-time NBA champion Kenny Smith further elaborated on Barkley's thoughts about Luka's uptake in his scoring. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Winning.
So, Kenny, he said you could agree or you could disagree. Which are you going with?
I would agree that the numbers should go down in the sense that, or they should be easier. It could be easier. I would say this. I was blessed to play with one of the greatest players ever played with, Hakeem Olajuwon. I averaged 17 points in Sacramento. I got to Houston, I averaged 17.8, but it was the easiest 17.8 that I ever averaged in my life. It was so easy because he creates so much attention and diversion that the guys have to guard you singularly or they have to leave you. I don't know if it's his numbers would go down, Chuck, but I don't know if his baskets are getting easier.
They're not getting easier.
Because they're not utilizing playing off people. So I would agree that they're not getting easier baskets. He's still getting the same amount, but it's not easier.
Agree, disagree?
I disagree, and I'll explain in a moment. Kyrie and Luka, they both have the same problems. They do what great players do, but they don't do what the greatest players do. I don't think their numbers should go down. If you're going to have your numbers like that, you should be able to do both, and it's been done. Michael Jordan numbers didn't go down when he started winning.
Actually, they did.
Yo, Shaq smoking crack, man. They did.
No, he did.
Yes, they did go down.
He was able to do both. Michael Jordan was the leading scorer in the league.
He was not able to do both. No, sir. He never averaged nowhere near 35 points per game when Phil Jackson came through in 1989. Not even close.
When he was winning championships.
But his numbers went down, Shaq. There's a big difference. The difference is people had to get you the ball. Luka has the ball. He's got to get rid of the ball more often.
And Michael got rid of the ball and still was the leading
But I'm
scorer
saying it's a different thing. Like they had to give you the ball to be the great player you were. Luka starts with the ball. He's got to get off the ball. Go back and look at Michael Jordan. And they talked about that in that documentary.
He went from 37 to 31, I believe.
He did.
I just remember him that.
Because when he was averaging 37, 38 points a game, they were not winning.
Scorer in the league.
Underdog points out his three highest scoring seasons, all before his first championship.
No.
Yeah. These guys got to do their research, man. Sometimes Kenny Smith and Shaq, I don't know what the hell is going on with those guys, but as soon as Phil Jackson came through in 1989, that Russell Westbrook style of play, just scoring a bunch of points, Michael Jordan just never ever returned to that, because Phil Jackson does what many great coaches do. They buckle down their star players into a system in which they can also trust teammates. The star players will always average what they're going to average, but them scoring 36 points per game and winning a championship, especially as perimeter players, it's not going to happen.
Question. And he said that in the documentary, because he said, when Tex Winter said to him, Michael, you've got to trust the other players. And that's going to piggyback on Kenny's point. If he trusts those other guys, they're going to be like, you know what? We know he's not going to shoot.
Ernie. You got to be able to do both. You got to be able to.
He should be getting 30, Shaq, instead of 36.
Whatever your number is.
Barkley's right. Barkley's spitting the truth. He should be getting 30. As I explained before, Kobe Bryant was hovering around 30. Michael Jordan hovered around 30. James Harden, in his most successful years with Houston, hovered around 30. As soon as he made the jump from averaging 30 a game to 36 points per game, the Rockets have far less team success.
You should be able to get that, but Chuck is right. You still got to get other people involved.
People forget when they look at field goal attempts and they look at free throws. When you get fouled on a shot, it doesn't count as a free throw attempt. A field goal attempt. So you take 20 shots and you get 15 free throws, you still have taken 8 more shots that are not being accounted for. And so it is a bulk of shots. So most people say, oh, he only took 22 shots or 20. No. But if you shot 15 free throws, you probably shot 35 times because he got fouled on the other ones that they do not count as attempts.
That is a great point brought up by Kenny Smith. The shots that are not counted that Luka attempted, it cannot really lead to great camaraderie on the floor with other teammates because guys are just pretty much standing around and guessing when you're going to give them the ball. Once again, historically, it's been shown the greatest players have had to dial the scale back quite a bit when it comes to playing championship basketball. But hey, this is one of the rare few times we get great analysis from guys like Charles and Kenny when they're not on their shit talking phase. So it is what it is. So this will be a continuation of my series, Old Rivals Never Die, and this will be volume 2, starring Udonis Haslem and Paul Pierce. And in this media landscape where the players have a certain medium to get their voices out, old rivalries and sentiments are going to be harder to squash. And that same competitive level that got many of these guys into the NBA is eventually going to spill out into the sports podcasting world. But when Udonis Haslem had his jersey retired, Paul Pierce jumped into the comments section and stated that his jersey retirement was given and not earned. But Udonis has some very interesting comments he made on Paul Pierce, where he stated, "You ain't like that." And later on in this segment, we'll go over the reasoning why Udonis knows for sure that he isn't like that. And that's due to a lot of the circumstances that played out in the stabbing that involved Pierce early on in his NBA career. But first, let's take a look at what Udonis had to say. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the individual person. It just had to do with the Celtics. And everybody know how I feel about the Celtics. Everybody know how I feel about Buddy them.
Redacted.
Yeah, everybody know how I feel about Buddy them.
Who Buddy and them?
I ain't gonna say Buddy name because somebody gonna get hurt. Because I'm gonna stop playing him. I'm gonna leave
He
him
called him
alone for
ugly.
somebody get hurt.
Oh, Paul Pierce?
Yeah,
I'll say his name.
I'm gonna leave Buddy.
Called him ugly.
No, listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't be with all them Twitter fingers and all them games playing. Like I'm gonna leave that alone for somebody to get hurt.
I ain't gonna lie. Listen, I always say funny. I think funny. I play too much. That was funny though.
Which one?
Well, he said that like, you still was giving it. Like, we all know you earned your retirement. Like,
yeah,
everybody know that.
The pettiness.
But
was
the
so
pettiness that he said that was like, it was good.
I got real smoke.
Yeah.
And did you guys? Did you see my response?
We did.
Yeah, no,
we did.
I meant that from the bottom of my heart. I meant that from the bottom of my heart. I'm gonna spare you, cause I know you ain't like that. I'm gonna spare you.
But that
you look at me in my eyes no, I'm with it. Think when you get money, like you gotta separate from certain. I'm still my daddy's child.
Oh yeah, I love
my
that.
Daddy's child. My daddy ain't raised no punk, and I don't play no games.
That's a fact.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'm with all that.
I love it.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disconnect from that situation because I don't play like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because one thing, what I said, I spoke on them as Celtics players. I never spoke on their accolades. I never spoke on what they accomplished. I always give them credit for that.
Yep.
Now you on some other. I ain't playing that game.
That ain't basketball.
I'm gonna leave that alone before I hurt you. And I mean that.
Nah, respect.
So, put my glasses back
Put
on.
them glasses back on.
Yeah.
Put them glasses back on.
Yeah.
Hey, put the Trinity back up, OG.
Put my glass back on.
Haslem knows for a fact that Paul Pierce ain't like that. And there's a very shrewd difference between being a tough NBA player, just kind of being that enforcer on the court, that tough guy, versus being a gangster. It's two different things. And guys like Paul Pierce have always tried to tread the line in between both worlds. Very similar to Ja Morant. But unlike Ja, Paul Pierce very early on in his career had found himself in a situation where he ran into some real life gangsters. And they ended up not only beating him up, but stabbing him over 11 times. But former media mogul Benzino has spoke on this, as he was very active on the scene in Boston, and he threw a party one night downtown when Paul Pierce first got drafted, in which at the time he was creating an avenue for different neighborhoods to connect and find a way to come together. And Paul Pierce has showed up to this event trying to play the tough guy on TV, while at the same time being in the midst of the real gangsters who have no second thoughts about perhaps throwing their life away and doing a prison bid. Sometimes players like Paul Pierce and Ja Morant mistake the tough guy act on the court for being a gangster on TV. And there's no such thing as that. There are no gangsters on TV. You're an NBA guy. You're being watched. Everyone knows what moves you're making. The league in itself already have private investigators seeing everything that you're doing. But when you run into them real gangsters, the situation can definitely change. You'll see certain parts of the story unfold that Paul Pierce was really never about that life, due to the manner in which he chose to handle the stabbing after the whole incident occurred.
It worked, man, you know. And then, so one night we gave an album release party. All the wise guys are coming. It's downtown too, you know, so it kind of was like, whoa, this is pretty dope. You know what I'm saying? Because that was rare. So we're downtown, so I guess the Celtics had came that night. Now, you know, I knew Paul from Kansas because I'm a big Celtics fan, and we was drafting him #1. He was the shit coming out of college. So it's like, oh shit, we're gonna pair him up with Antoine Walker. We getting ready to like make some noise again. We had sucked for so long. Everybody was happy that Paul was coming. I think we was in last fucking place the year before. So that night, something had happened, me and my man Hirsch. Something had happened, because we're in the club, and let's say me and Hirsch are over here by the pool table, and they over there by where the music's at, the DJ. You know, you notice that the Celtics in it, because everybody, these niggas is tall as you know what I'm saying? I remember Tony Battie was in there. When Paul got there, right, I couldn't recognize him. Like he was in the club, I didn't even know. It's not like the club was super big, but I think it had 2 floors. So I didn't recognize if he was in there. Because when you see a nigga on TV and basketball, the first time you're seeing him in a dark nightclub, you're not even gonna recognize him really. Because I didn't. A fight breaks out, niggas is over there beefing. That's a regular thing in Boston, niggas fighting. That happens all the time in clubs. That's why we never had no clubs. It was guaranteed to be fights. I mean, bloody, fucked up fights, dying fights, all kind of shit. Shootouts, stabbings. Anyways, niggas is giving this one dude the business. Nobody else jumped in with. That's one thing I noticed. No other Celtics went over there to help Paul that night.
Now that's interesting in itself. Once again, there are no gangsters on TV. Do not confuse a tough act on the court for being gangster. Those are 2 different things. The league throughout its history had its fair share of tough guys, but most of these players never ever claimed to be a gangster. As many of the tough guys tend to come from backgrounds in which they really know who the gangsters really are. And 9 out of 10 times, how hard they worked to get into the league, they was trying to take their families away from being around that lifestyle. But once again, Paul Pierce, trying to act tough, got involved with the real wolves, and all his teammates just stood there watching. None of them got involved.
There was a few of them in there. Nobody went over there to help him. Now, me and Hirsch, my man, Tony Hirsch, we're standing to the side watching everything. And we seeing, you know, the whole situation. And we're just like, damn, look at this shit. If I'd known that was Paul, I would have went over there. Because I seen niggas, it was, you know, he was the only one. But it happened so regularly. But if I knew it was Paul Pierce, the #1 draft pick of the Celtics, I would have went over there and stopped that. When Paul was laid out, the lights came on, everybody's rushing to get the fuck out of there. I'm running downstairs to my car. I'm walking fast in the parking lot. And I think Tony Battie and his brother was like, yeah, it was Made Man Benzino. He's right next to me saying my name. So I jump in the whip. Come to find out, you know, people are talking. Paul was getting real aggressive with, you know, one of the wise guys' girls. And he told him to chill. And I guess Paul didn't chill. And he was being real aggressive with his girl. The rest is history. Like trying to holler at her. You know, trying to just, you know what I'm saying? After somebody like, yo, that's my girl or whatever. And then, you know, words fly. It happens so much. Everybody by me talking this can see this. This happens all the time. You have your girl with you, some nigga getting agree, yo, homie, she's with me. You're supposed to only take one time. You know, the rule is you're supposed to take one time, and if you didn't know, that's your time to chill. If you still saying something after that, then...
Yeah, Paul Pierce inviting all the smoke. He inviting all the smoke. He probably didn't think they was going to do nothing because they were downtown, quote unquote. But little did Paul know, most of these guys, they were not accustomed to being downtown, so they didn't care. Regardless, it was their event, so they treated the venue no different than them being in their hoods.
Niggas died from that shit. Like graveyards, jails are full of niggas over shit like that. So this ain't nothing new.
Facts. And the NBA in its history has lost a #1 draft pick. I believe Benji out of Chicago in the 80s. He was projected to be the #1 draft pick, and he got into an argument with his girl, and some other guy was trying to defend her, and he ended up shooting Benji. So the NBA in its history has had a #1 draft pick lose his life over a woman. So like Benzino said, that is something that a lot of men, particularly from certain neighborhoods, have lost their life over. And there's people serving time for killing over a woman, especially in the hood. So that is nothing new. And the NBA in its history has experienced this.
I ended up rushing back to New York because I knew this shit was getting ready to hit the fan. You know, this was all up, every news, every world news. I mean, this was crazy, you know, because he got stabbed up pretty bad. Now, my lawyer said that they went in there, the gang task force, with a, you know, the picture book, and they kept, Paul was on his bed. He just lived, like an inch away from his lung, heart, something, or his lung, something, but he got fucked up.
He got fucked up, but right here, you're about to see how much of a civilian Paul Pierce really is, because he does something right here that gangsters don't normally do. Once again, the tough guy act on the court and being a gangster is two different things.
And they kept pointing at my picture, and they wanted him to say it was me. They kept telling him to do it, kept telling him. In his bed. He didn't pick me, but he picked. Remember I told you my man next to me? The whole time when all this happened? Picked him. He was nowhere near when that shit was going on. We're watching, looking at each other, shaking our head like, look at this. Because again, it's supposed to be the Wise Guys record release party. We're watching shit go down.
So in reality, if Paul Pierce was about that life, he would have never pointed anyone out. He just would have said, I don't know. I never seen these people before. That's what the quote unquote gangsters do, or people about that street life. That's the code. They don't talk to police. They don't tell them nothing. But you can't play tough guy or just a NBA gangster, and then when it suits you, you play civilian. Once again, the fact that he pointed anyone out in the book shows you right there he's not about that life, and that's why Udonis Haslem know for a fact that he's not about that life.
Because again, it's supposed to be the Wise Guys record release party. We're watching shit go down. So I had to get a lawyer. So we had to come back. You know, we got stopped at the airport, put in cuffs. Hearst ended up getting locked up. We had to bail him out. I had to pay for a lawyer. Took it to trial. God willing. Thank God he didn't get locked up. They found him not guilty. But Roscoe and Trev, Roscoe got it like 20 years and Trev got it a bunch of time. And you know, Paul Pierce picked him out. You know, he said those are the ones who stabbed and punched him.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So he told and everything.
He told. Now my thing is this, right? You know.
Now even the interviewer is shocked that he told. Once again, guys that are about that life, them telling is not even an option.
I've told the story before without saying that Paul told, because I want to, but my guys did years behind that shit. When I see Paul do the Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes interview, I thought he was real kind of, I thought he was too loose with it, with his answers. You know, this guy's still sitting in jail for that shit right now. And, you know, for you to be, he should have manned up to his actions, because not only that's telling the truth, and that's some real nigga shit, but also you're gonna help these other young guys out there who are in different cities on how they act and their behavior. You gotta let them know, don't do the shit that I did. Be aggressive in some other city's girl with a real nigga's chick. Like, don't be, he needs to tell that, because he almost died from that, and my guys got a lot of time from that.
And guys like Ja Morant could learn from that. Don't be playing gangster and trying to portray a life that you know nothing about, nor you're willing to risk and be about.
So to me, if he's the truth, then he needs to tell the truth on what happened that night.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. So he was trying to holler at another dude, chick, and that's why he got stabbed. Yeah.
That pretty much was why. I mean, nobody just, again, it was a place where it was a night of celebration, so niggas wasn't on that shit. Paul just got too aggressive. Paul's from Inglewood. I've heard stories about Paul. Now, I've met Paul a couple of times. Not like he was a bad guy or whatever, but, these guys that I love, those are my guys, and I love them guys. And it was unfortunate. It was fucked up.
Now, one of the stories about Paul Pierce back in the day from Inglewood, he was a highly coveted basketball player. And he was a shit-talking fat kid. All the players of his era, when they were coming up and they were highly ranked in the amateur circuit, they all already knew about Paul Pierce, the pudgy, trash-talking motherfucker from Inglewood. So that same energy that Paul Pierce had on the court that got him into the league, you got to know when to turn that off. And it's looking like the same thing is sort of applying to Ja Morant in the previous mistakes he made in the past 2 seasons, just not knowing when to turn off the persona. Because when you run into the real wolves, just like how Paul Pierce experienced, none of your teammates is going to be there to help you. You're going to be participating in the repercussions of the gangster life all by yourself. So it is what it is, and now you see why Udonis Haslem knows for a fact that Paul Pierce is not about that life. So this will be a continuation of my series, When the Money is Worth the Headache, and this will be volume 2. And as the onpouring of cash just comes into professional sports through the gambling aspect, we're already seeing a series of conundrums happening. On volume 1 of this series, I touch base on JB Bickerstaff, the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, actually receiving death threats and personal phone calls directly to him and his family in regards to certain parlays being messed up. That's why I call this series When the Money's Worth the Headache, because when you take a look at the billions of dollars just coming in, the cash flow is just undeniable. New York State alone by the end of last year was 19 billion in wagered bets, followed by New Jersey 11 billion, Illinois 11 billion, Nevada 8, Pennsylvania 7, Ohio 7, Arizona 6, Virginia 5, Colorado 5, and Massachusetts $4 billion wagered in bets. But in this segment right here, it's even crazy to figure out where to begin, because we're seeing things play out in real time, with Major League Baseball having their mega international superstar in Shohei Ohtani getting caught up with quote-unquote paying off gambling debts to an illegal bookie that was investigated by the feds. And at the same time, another event comes into light with the Jontay Porter incident, with him actually leaving games early, and the sporting books were able to detect irregularities in the gambling patterns involving the prop bets around his over and unders. But when it comes to prop bets, similar to the ones that I placed on Jontay Porter, the NCAA president expressed specific concerns on these types of bets. And make no mistake about it, prop bets, if you separated it into its own entity, just those caliber of bets alone are a multi-billion-dollar business. But the NCAA president spoke on how these types of bets are easier to get away with and harder to prove, thus putting them in a compromising position.
My concern about prop betting is just that putting myself in the shoes of a young person who's on a campus, who has a friend or two that come up to them and say, I love you, I've always supported you. If you could just miss your first couple of free throws this week, it won't affect the outcome of the game. I've talked to a lot of coaches about this, and I've talked to a ton of conference commissioners and athletic directors, and yeah, they're all concerned. And I think they're concerned about it for the same reasons we are.
But we'll break this down layer by layer. First, starting off with the Jontay Porter issue. Let's see what one of the spokesmen for DraftKings had to say about this situation. The players that are willing to take chances, the sports books are putting you on notice.
We have no comment on this story. In general, it is important to note that one of the many benefits of legal and regulated sports betting is that sports betting operators identify and report suspicious activity, and the integrity of sport is, therefore, protected in a manner that does not exist in the illegal market.
Crafty response by the spokesman, not only not making an initial judgment on Jontay Porter, but also promoting the fact that the legal gambling side of sports has regularities. He speaks as almost a public servant, but the safety guards he's making reference to only applies to other sports booking agencies. They're going to notify each other so they won't end up losing money, and they do the same exact thing in the illegal market. But with the prop betting, the biggest conundrum of it all, it definitely adds into the wheel of just a large sum of cash that's being floated around these gambling companies. Because you see, in a way now, with the media landscape kind of collapsing on its own, the influx of all this money that's coming from gambling is really floating the bill for sports media coverage. That's why you see ESPN went out of their way to open up a new subsidiary in ESPN Bets, and also the NBA infusing the gambling aspect into their league pass. This issue, I tell you what, is definitely multi-layered, and we're going to go over it piece by piece. So starting off with Jontay Porter, the Toronto Raptors two-way player, aka the brother of Michael Porter Jr. His situation kind of played out interesting because the public at large kind of got a peek behind the curtain of what's going on behind these sports booking companies. And things pretty much turned out as we expected, as the house is definitely designed not to lose a lot of money. These guys are keeping track of betting patterns, and not only that, they're sharing information along with other rival bookies. As it was detected that when Jontay Porter had left 2 games early, one on January 26th and one on March 20th, the prop bets on the amount of 3-pointers that he would make all hit and had betting irregularities. And it was immediately red flagged and reported to the NBA. And for those of you who are in the know, most prop bets, the limit is usually $1,000 to $2,000. But on those 2 nights that Jontay Porter had left these games early, there were numerous accounts trying to bet $20,000, $10,000 on his unders. Once again, the house is literally designed not to lose big. But the optics for Porter is not looking good, as in the first game on January 26th, he left the game early with an eye injury. And then on March 20th, he left the game early with an illness. But little did he know that the house was watching him, and behind the curtain, the amount of bets outside of those dates did not add up. So the league was definitely notified. And Jontay, man, he has a lot of questionable things. Once again, we live in the era of receipts, as he had a crypto social media account where he promoted and sold services such as consulting and just giving out advice on investments. And numerous times in the past, even after he played for the Memphis Grizzlies, he bragged about hitting on the parlays of that same team. So the evidence was already kind of out there that this guy has no hesitation into flipping some of the inner nuances he knows what's going on with the teams into some money. And just being involved in crypto, it's something about crypto, man. It's a great technology, but it definitely attracts the scammers. It's almost like a haven for pump and dump. But for the NBA, this is only the very beginning of these problems, because this incident involving the NBA is only with a 2-way fringe player. But Major League Baseball, their gambling scandal not only involves their highest paid player, but one of the most marketable and megastar global players that they ever had. And the global aspect has to be emphasized because the Shohei Ohtani star is integrated into Major League Baseball's international appeal, which means larger viewing audience, larger TV contracts, larger advertisements, and just international recognition, which is something all the professional leagues are chasing. You look at the NFL, now they're going to have games in South America, also in certain parts of Africa. They're looking to expand in the Middle East and Asian markets with some preseason or regular season games. And you see Adam Silver and the NBA year by year put their foot deeper into the whole global aspect and appeal of the game. So for Major League Baseball to have such a prize star get caught up in a scandal like this, him being so integrated into their future plans, in a way, they're going to have to find every angle they can to make sure that he doesn't get suspended, because this could have major financial implications, especially for the Dodgers. They're under a very lucrative TV deal, and that $700 million contract that they offered to Ohtani, best believe the international appeal and just him bringing a larger demographic has a lot to do with it. But this whole situation in baseball is a clusterfuck, a series of conundrums on conundrums. As for those of you who are not in the know, basically an illegal bookie in Southern California got busted by the feds. They found Ohtani's name on a payment receipt, and in the notes it was marked loan. Now, to counteract that, Ohtani's team had his interpreter sit down with Tisha Thompson, who is basically an investigative reporter for ESPN. So the interpreter has sat down with her for over an hour, and he explained that he racked up $4 million. $4 million of gambling debt as an interpreter. And Ohtani went on his personal computer and made the payments to pay off those debts. Once again, it's conundrums on conundrums. I believe right there is a disconnect on the international level, because for many years overseas, Gambling is not an issue. It's not a big deal. This is something now the states are just catching up on. So as a lot of these leagues get global and get international players, they have a completely different relationship with gambling and sports. This is something not new to them. A lot of the players may have even been placing bets since they've been teenagers. Keep in mind, overseas, things are a lot different. The drinking age is a lot lower. And some of the cultural norms here in the States that we are now catching up to, maybe loosening up the laws against, is really nothing new to the international players and audience. But once again, Ohtani's people made the interpreter available for a full hour interview with Tisha Thompson on ESPN. And before the report was able to get printed or just put out, they were instantly contacted by Ohtani's people and they completely changed their story, saying that he was robbed of the $4 million and he was a victim of theft. Keep in mind, the interpreter is his best friend. This is where the story gets weird and it's conundrums on conundrums. And things get further confusing because the MLB and the Players Union, I'm pretty sure they have certain language within their rule book of players actually making payments to gambling companies or just participating with illegal sports books in a certain way, which then would actually put Ohtani in a situation where he could get suspended for a year. But this is where Ohtani and his people don't understand American media. They love a good clusterfuck story like this. And look at the compromising situation it puts everyone surrounding Ohtani in, as his general manager was asked about their whole situation.
Dave, can you tell us what Ipe told the team in the clubhouse last night?
You know what, Jack, I can't comment on it, man. On that, can't comment.
When was the decision made to have him address the team?
Anything with that, the meeting, can't comment. Sorry.
Were you surprised when you found out he was fired when that happened?
Again, can't say anything. Not going to comment, guys.
With Shohei, like obviously, this is a big thing in his life. Like, how has he handled it from what you can tell? Are you worried about it being a distraction with him? Just that part of it. What have you seen so far?
Shohei's ready. He's preparing in a hitters meeting right now and ready to go for tonight's game.
Oh, he better be ready to play. That television contract is riding on that. Major League Baseball right now is in a very interesting and unique position because their RSN business model, just the local team TV deals, is kind of shaky. And the Dodgers are one of the teams, just like the Yankees, that their revenue per subscriber is really high. They're one of the very few profitable teams. And even ESPN, who have an opt-out deal with Major League Baseball, will probably more than likely exercise it, as their top executives don't really put baseball as a priority for the network going forward for their future plans. So they're either looking to get Major League Baseball at a discounted rate or just move on from it. So Ohtani is a major piece for MLB to actually position themselves as a valuable piece as the media landscape changes. Even the contract that they gave him was very unique, in which they pay him $2 million for the first 10 years. Then they defer 98% of his salary for the following 10 years, which is about $68 million a year. And he could live anywhere in the States or anywhere in the world. He might be saving on taxes. And apparently it's even interest-free, which is a very lucrative deal for the Dodgers because they can actually take the money that they're supposed to pay him and collect interest on it, which is something the NBA also does with all the player salaries. That's why they pay them weekly, because all that money's in a pot and it's collecting interest and it goes to the league. So it's almost like money on money. But again, with Ohtani, he's directly connected to Major League Baseball, putting themselves in a good position to be a valuable piece for the changing media landscape. In their eyes, don't really view Major League Baseball as a valuable piece of inventory going forward. They view Major League Baseball as not as valuable as it once was, and perhaps they want to structure their deals different going forward. And this is where the ultimate conundrum comes with the influx of just gambling advertisements and the rise of all these sports books. It's a major possibility that all the cash that's being generated is propping up a lot of these media companies right now in order to continue to pay all these highly inflated sports rights, even though major broadcast companies like ESPN are actually hiring personality-based talents. Because the viewing audiences of today are accustomed to consuming more personality-based talent. They're not necessarily loyal to certain institutional conglomerates. And with the advent of distribution changing, YouTube, podcasts, certain simulcasts, like when you see Eli Manning and his brother call certain football games. So people who like them too and just like their commentary would tune into that particular broadcast, even though the same game might be on ESPN. So the media landscape is definitely changing. And you see it with the hiring of Pat McAfee. Unlike Stephen A. Smith, this guy's bringing the audience into ESPN, which is a totally different business than what the media landscape has been before in the last 10 to 15 to 20 years. And it's just not sports. You see it in the political / news sphere. Personalities like Don Lemon, Tucker Carlson, all these guys now are venturing out into their own. And Joe Rogan is also a perfect example. And it looks like the biggest sports conglomerate of them all are headed towards that direction. They want to go direct to consumer, so they need great personalities who already have an audience. So in the meantime, while the media landscape changes and all these entities try to figure out how the cash flow and revenue is going to work, the gambling provides sort of a soft cushion and just give them a little more ample time to kind of figure out that whole business model of how this is going to work. And all the sports leagues, they want to continue earning the billions of dollars of revenue, and then when their TV contracts are up, they want to get even more. So some of these leagues are going to have to figure out where do they fit in all this. That's why you see the NBA keep emphasizing, oh, they want to phase out load management. They're looking at how the game is played. Is it entertaining enough? Is there too much scoring? Is there not enough scoring? Same thing for the NFL. They don't want the quarterbacks hurt. They don't want guys getting hit and stars being out. They all care to make their products as entertaining as possible. And even Major League Baseball in the last couple of years have made certain shifts. They got out of that rut of just playing the game the right way, quote unquote. That shit is boring. And eventually their asses are not going to make enough money if they keep having that mindset. But so far in this very present moment right now, the influx of gambling money, once again, for those of you watching the visual version, I'll put up a chart of all the money that was wagered just last year in these states alone. It's almost like they're running a mega sports leagues out of all these states and just gambling alone. That's how much the gambling aspect brings in such an influx of cash. And the money might be worth a headache, but I wonder for how long. Because gambling in this country has always been linked to the underworld. It's always been there for certain subcultures that may not be appealing, aka addiction, loan sharking, organized crime, and even worse, fixing games. And you can even say human nature. Something about the gambling aspect, whether a person has a lot of money, they want to win. They want to get one over. We see Michael Jordan be known to love gambling, and it's not necessarily a money thing. It taps into something deep in a person who's competitive. A lot of these guys that are involved in the league, it takes a high level of just competitiveness to get into these professional leagues. So sometimes guys might not know how to turn it off, but we'll see. A lot of things here are coming into play. Media landscape is changing. Money's not really looking the same, but the influx of cash coming from these sports books, it's almost undeniable at this point. So it is what it is. You guys definitely hit up the mailbags with any questions you have. I'll feature it as a segment on the show. And until next time, you guys stay safe. Peace.